Hello everyone, welcome back to the Highland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. Got a special plant spotlight for you guys today. Not a tropical pitcher plant Nepenthes, but a different pitcher plant group from the other side of the world. This is Heliamphora huberi, or at least a huberi introgression. I'll get to that in a minute. A marsh pitcher plant species from the Chimanta Massif of kind of south central Venezuela. The massif being an assortment, a grouping of tepuis or table mountains in the area that are relatively close together. So species that live on one tepui have been relatively easily able to jump over to some of the other tepuis. So like this species is actually found on more than a half dozen different table mountains, kind of all in that cluster. Now, this species grows between 1,850 and 2,200 meters in elevation. So that's roughly between 7,000 and like almost 8,000, 8,500 feet in elevation. Very, very high up, very cool, humid, bright when the sun comes out, but very cool and cloudy when it's not conditions up there. Like most marsh pitcher plants, these guys are adapted for growing kind of in the rock cracks where debris and detritus and stuff are able to build up, because torrential rains will wash everything off of the bare rocks otherwise, or in some of the lower depressions where soil and moss and stuff are actually able to build up. So these guys will grow alongside little temporary puddles and such in that area. Now, this species doesn't get very large. They tend to grow only between 5 and 8 inches tall at full size. This is actually a plant that has flowered before, and so it is full size, but it's kind of at the minimum size range for this species. And this is probably one reason why. It's got these roots that are actually, that one's actually an old dead root, so we're going to get rid of that. But it's got these new roots like this nice white one that are coming out the bottom, so it's probably looking for a slightly deeper space to grow, and we'll be repotting it very shortly. But at full growth, they may get almost up to about that tall, but is a relatively small species for the genus overall. This species tends to produce these very simple, fairly cylindrical pitchers. It does have kind of a funnel-shaped bottom half that comes out to a slightly ballooned area, and then narrows at a very distinctive hip. That's the transition between the digestive zone and the trapping zone of the traps. And also on the front of the trap is about the point where the drainage hole is within the wing of the pitcher. That allows them to drain out excess rainwater, because, well, it's always raining up in that habitat, and they have nothing protecting their open mouths from gathering that rain. So they don't want to wash out all their prey and stuff. So they have a different place for the rain to get out instead. But above that little hip, it does expand up to a mostly cylindrical, slightly flared upper portion. That wing splits around where the mouth starts, and then it comes up to a very short neck and this little, very distinctively helmet-shaped nectar spoon. Now, this is where we get into the debate about purity for this species and such, because technically, one of the key traits of Heliamphora huberi is that the species, the pure species, has this little tiny beak-like upturned hook right at the tip of the nectar spoon. Now this one, and I'll show on a closer up point, doesn't really have that. It's got a little protrusion right at the tip of this helmet, but it doesn't have that little upturned hook that is supposedly really diagnostic of this species. And that means it probably has introgression with another species that grows on most of the tepuis that this one grows on, and that's Heliamphora pulchella. Now, this species doesn't really have a whole lot in the way of hair on the exterior of the pitcher either. It's mostly glabrous. It might have a slight velvet feel to it, but nothing like the usually more distinctly hairy exteriors that pulchella has. So that's one thing that this does inherit from the truly pure species, and is one thing that keeps people calling this maybe pure huberi or close enough in cultivation. Now, this species is a relatively colorful species. It's got these nice red blushes and oftentimes red veins that go down through most of the pitcher. And of course, that nectar spoon is usually this deep cherry to almost purple coloration, especially as the pitcher ages. And that helps attract insects to it, where they drop down and then are unable to climb past the downward pointing hairs and waxy layers that are inside the pitcher. and so they drown and then get broken down by mostly bacteria and other mutualistic organisms in there, because with all that rainwater coming through, these guys don't really have it in them to produce their own enzymes that would just get washed away. So they rely on other things to break things down for them instead, and they get nutrients that way. Now, when this species flowers, it produces a pretty large flower stalk, can be up to almost 2 feet tall. The first couple of bracts on there will often have fully formed pitchers on them, and then as they go up, it forms more of a standard leaf bract that encloses, usually near the upper half of that stalk, individual buds that come down and open into 4 to 6 tepaled flowers. Now, each of those tepals usually starts out kind of pinkish in coloration or white, and then as they flare open, they actually hang upside down and flare open like little bells. They eventually age to pure white and then kind of a greenish coloration, much like the bracts. Now, those flowers, they don't produce pollen all at the same time. They don't open all at the same time either. They also don't have both of their reproductive structures active simultaneously. Rather, the female part, the stigma, is ripe and receptive just as the flower is starting to open and for a day or so afterward. And then it stops being receptive, and then 2-3 days after that, pollen starts being released from the anthers. So if you have 2 plants blooming at the same time, fair chance you may be able to get one young flower and one old flower on the different stalks at the same time and cross pollen between them. If you only have one plant that is blooming, though, you do have to basically save pollen from an older flower and then wait for the next flower to start opening and transfer pollen to it in order to try and get seeds. They take a very long time to produce those seeds, sometimes 6-8 months for that pod to ripen, and then it cracks open and it produces all these little kind of disc-shaped, papery brown seeds that then take also several months to germinate. Now, this species, like all Heliamphora, is kind of a touchy plant to grow well and does require some very particular conditions. They do not tolerate heat very well, so it requires cold temperatures. That really highland habitat comes in here. So they like very moist soils, so anywhere from almost pure sphagnum to kind of a 1-to-1 sphagnum perlite mix in a fairly deep pot, if you can, is what these guys prefer best in order to be happy, and that stays moist all the time. You can actually set them in water almost constantly because they are used to fairly wet conditions in their natural habitat. You don't necessarily want to flood them for too long if you have something that's that deep, but you can keep them fairly moist at all times. They require fairly high humidity in order to form and keep these pitchers happy. So if they get low humidity, the pitchers may actually start to wilt and crack relatively easily. So you want to keep it high humidity, and they want very, very bright conditions because up on those tepuis, there's very open habitat and very high elevation and tropical. So they're getting blasted with bright sunlight every time the clouds clear up there. So in cultivation, you probably can't put them outside because in most of the places we live, it's going to be way too hot for them. So in indoors, instead, you give them the strongest artificial lighting you possibly can. 10,000 plus lumens only a couple of feet above the plant is probably what they would be happiest with. Very, very strong, full spectrum, bright light to keep them happy. And then, of course, those temperatures, you don't want to exceed 80 degrees Fahrenheit with these guys for very long. In fact, if you can stay below 80 degrees at all times, that's what they're happiest with. And in fact, if you can keep them below 70 at all times, you may not even have to deal with too much of a temperature drop at night because keeping them cool at all times will keep them happy just the same as if you have a warm temperature during the day and then drop that down into the mid to low 50s Fahrenheit at night. If you have it warm during the day, they need that colder temperature at night in order to be happy, or they will eventually collapse. They do not tolerate warm conditions very well at all. Now, this species is generally a slow-growing plant. Some Heliamphora, like Heliamphora minor or some of the hybrids, may grow relatively quickly, but you can expect this plant to maybe be producing one new leaf every month and a half to 2 months or so. They're very slow to grow out. They produce these kind of crawling rhizomes across just under the moss surface, and Given a couple years, eventually they'll branch and produce enough little offshoot growth points to where those will kind of naturally snap apart and you can propagate them that way. Since a lot of people don't produce seeds with these guys very often, those divisions, very rarely as they are usually the best way to propagate these guys. Once they're ready, they will kind of naturally have breakpoints, and hopefully each of those pieces will have their own roots already formed at that point. And then you can just take those and plant them into their own soil and grow them on from there. Now, if a piece falls off that does not have its own roots, it's not a loss yet. You simply need to take that rhizome and stick it into very nice wet moss and keep that plant in an enclosed environment and very, very humid. So bag it up maybe in a pot of very wet moss, or just basically almost bury it in the moss so that it is surrounded in humidity and moisture, and it will take a few months to start producing their long roots. Now, when you are working with these guys, dividing them, moving them around, repotting them and such, you want to take a great deal of care because these leaves, they're very stiff and they're very brittle, and the roots are the same way as well. So when you're repotting them, it's very easy to just kind of accidentally bend them slightly too far and they crack. So be very, very gentle with them. You don't want to break those leaves as you're working with them. Now, if you have the right environments, very humid, bright, and cool, and you have the patience to grow these guys on for the many years it takes to really get them mature and looking big, healthy, and beautiful, it's certainly one to look out for. Now, these are plants. In the wild, luckily, they're relatively stable and protected because it's hard to get up to those Table Mountains, so there's not a whole lot of poaching going on with these guys. Although oftentimes it is important to kind of keep exact locations secret because there are some people who are unscrupulous enough to try and book helicopter trips out there to try and find these plants. But because of the low poaching risk of these guys and the fact that they are already in cultivation means they are in cultivation, the ones that you find are going to generally be produced in cultivation, in vitro. And so you don't have to really worry about accidentally buying a poached plant most of the time, especially if you're buying from reputable sources, like very well-established nurseries that are well-known. But you will probably expect to pay a pretty penny for these guys. A fully mature plant might end up costing you over $100. A young immature division or something might still be $65, $70 or more, including, especially if you get one of the clones that is a confirmed, completely pure species, that little hook and everything, that is going to be a very sought-after plant and quite expensive. So if you want to grow one of these guys, make sure you save up for it so that you're ready to do so. But certainly, if you have the patience, they are worth growing. It is quite a beautiful plant once it's fully established and going, as you can see here. Now, that is about all that I have for that species. Certainly, if there's anything that I've missed, questions that you have, make sure to leave them in the comments below the video here. I will be posting more videos like this in the future, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't miss anything that's coming up. Share this video if you know somebody else who would like to learn about this particular species. And certainly if you want to learn more, you can always find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. at Carlton Carnivores. I'm always sharing photos and video tidbits. My website, carltoncarnivores.com, also has the database and blog there with a lot of plant information as well as information on the animals that I like to work with. If you'd like to help support the production of these videos in a more financial manner, you can also buy plants or merchandise and such from the website shop there as well. Or become a Patreon member where you can get early access to the videos, access to the monthly seed contests that I do, and more. Or if you don't want to do a monthly thing, you can do a one-time donation at places like coffee.com, or simply contact me for other direct methods. The links for most of these things will be in the video description below, though. But until next time, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.